Hey there, everybody. It's Carpo again. What if I were to tell you that we should turn all golf courses into homeless camps? What would you think about that? Now, I just posed that question. It just popped into my head a while back, and I thought it would be kind of an interesting introduction to a video because of more than the fact that, well, let's just start out by saying that there are two extremes on that page. One, the golfers themselves. Let's just take a high end golf course, for example. The last thing that these rich fucks would want is homeless people camped out on their greens, of course, right? But that's not the only reason. Of course, they also, that's the sport they play, that's what they're interested in, and, hey, so be it, more power to them. It's their land, supposedly. They bought and paid for this land, supposedly, which I don't really believe in land ownership in that way, but let's just set that aside for a moment. If we turned, let's just say, local golf courses into an area for the homeless, not only would we have flat and easy land to pitch tents on, but we would also have water usually already in there, and you have services and utilities. Now, it sounds ridiculous. Of course, it's not going to happen. And I'm not necessarily saying it would be the best solution. Homelessness is a huge problem right now in this country, and it's going to get worse and worse. You know, nothing sickens me more than when people poke fun at, like, California by saying, oh, look at their homeless problem. Oh, look how they mismanaged. Sure, San Francisco has horrible housing situation. But you know what? A majority of these people work, and a lot of them work in Silicon Valley at pretty decent jobs, but they can't afford $4,000 a month for a two-bedroom apartment. I mean, it's just gone through the roof. There's all different issues that cause this problem. And you can't just move people onto a golf course, right? I mean, it might not be where they need to be or near their work, but um, it's like the extreme rich and the extreme poor issue. We have people with endless land to hit little tiny balls around into tiny cups. And then we have people who are really struggling. The people who are working, doing these jobs, some of them probably working at the golf courses, people who are just trying to make enough money to get by and working their ass off. And I feel like, it's kind of sickening because we need to take care of one another. There's no easy solution to the homeless problem. But I live in the Portland area, and let me tell you, Portland has a huge homeless crisis right now. It's not as bad as Californians yet, but I mean, under the bridges, I've watched this unfold over my lifetime. I've lived in this city my whole life. It has become so bad over the last 5 to 10 years. The Portland housing prices have gone through the roof. But let me tell you this, it's not all Californians causing the problem, but as the housing prices went up in California and they began having their own issues, a lot of Californians started moving north, which I can't blame them. If I lived there, I would have too. But this started in like the 80s and 90s and has grown exponentially. And now a lot of Portlanders have been forced out by, just not being the same reason as California. And San Francisco, there are many reasons why they have problems, but it's LA has entire neighborhoods, entire roads lined with tents, RVs, vans, cars. I mean, it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind thing. A lot of people just think, well, there's a few guys with tents on the side of the street. No, these are entire encampments. These look like refugee camps, and a lot of them, if you looked at them, they would look like something from another country if you didn't know any better. You would think that these are people migrating across borders. I mean, I have a lot of empathy for those who have lost their homes, and at the same time, a lot of resentment for those who are homeless by choice and abuse their privilege by standing on the same street corner for years on end when they don't need the money or when they could be working or doing something else. And sure, this is why a lot of people have an issue with the homeless on the corner, but you can't point the finger at all homeless people and think that they're like that. And people know this. Times are changing. Down in Southern Cali, they have an app now where if you're homeless, you can go and you can sign up with this app. If somebody's driving by and they see you on the street, It's crazy. It will actually show you on this little app thing, and you can donate money to the person through an app. I mean, on one hand, it's great for people who need a little extra money, but horrible for the idea of communication directly to a person. I have mixed feelings about all these things, but the point being is that people are trying. And I've thought so many times, how can I help? I've thought about starting Kickstarters or GoFundMe kind of things to try to help a community, but I have mixed feelings about that because A, I don't know where the money is best spent, and I'd have to work on an actual plan, and B, I feel like whenever people do that, they're suspect of, charity fraud and robbery, because so many people do. So many charities like pocket too much of the money. Like Goodwill CEO, I think, makes like $500,000 a year or more last time I looked. But the point is that not all charities are really charities, and so a lot of folks feel scammed. It's even worse with charity shaming at the grocery store. But when it comes down to seeing people in the street who are struggling, it's easy to just walk by and assume that this person, they chose their path. And that's complete bullshit. That attitude has to change. Because we know jobs are becoming more scarce, good jobs. The wage in this country is stagnated for over 40 years. It hasn't increased as it should, and we're not making nearly enough money to pay for the housing increases, which have increased 5 to 10 times in some places in the last decade. And so what do we do? What do we do? My wife and I bought our house in 2002. We bought it on a stated income. This was back before the housing crash. And back then they were giving loans to anyone. She was a waitress, and I was in construction, but I think I was getting paid under the table. I didn't even have records. They just basically said, here, you want a house? Take a house. We got lucky, and we were able to keep it until now. We've lived here for, 16, 17 years. I feel very grateful to have a home. And we've had our issues, our problems, using calculators to go shopping to make sure you don't overspend. But I just know that all it takes is one disability, one issue, one problem, one trip to the hospital that can set people back, and they lose their home, they lose everything. And starting back over is really difficult. So if anything, this is to give a message for people to please have empathy for those who have no home and who have lost it all. It's very hard for us to get motivated when we don't have anything to motivate for, when we feel like we're left behind by society. And I'd like to say that ex-convicts on their behalf as well. Ex-convicts have had the hardest time getting employment. And a person would say, well, they got busted. I fucking hate that attitude. That bullshit people put out, like, well, if a person got arrested, they deserved it. Do you know anything about cops, really? Or if a person, is running from cops and they get shot, the kind of people who have the nerve to leave a comment like, well, don't run from police and you won't get shot. All I can say is just a big middle finger to people like you. I fucking hate people like you who have that kind of attitude that just anybody who dies at the hands of a cop deserves to die. And so sorry to be blunt there, but how else do you get your point across, right? It's my opinion. A lot of people are just, cops are not trained. In a lot of police forces, they have about 8 hours of mental training. And then that's changing in a lot of places. And I have nothing against police in general. It's a hard fucking job. But there are plenty of cops out there who corrupt the system enough to just be disgusted by the things that they get away with. And this is coming out more and more with cameras. But the fact that cops can shut down their own body cameras and, hide evidence, it's nothing new. But I don't want to get too far off track here, but a lot of the people who are homeless have mental disorders. And some of these mental disorders can be treated, can be worked out, but they just magnify and complicate. Psychosis goes unchecked and unresolved. What we're doing is we're letting down our own society. It's the same way I feel about healthcare. A lot of folks don't think that we should, be able to take care of our own. Well, if you can't get your own insurance, tough shit. And that's usually the people who get insurance through their job. We all know how much it really costs to have health insurance for a family when you make a moderate income. and I don't have it. And even if you do have it, the deductibles can be so high that going to the hospital, you still have to pay $5,000 before you even get anything paid for. This system means that people don't go to the hospital when they need help. And therefore, preventative maintenance, it causes us more money in the long run by those who are sickened in the hospital and end up not being able to pay. It's the same way with your car. You can ignore it as long as you want, but if you don't change your oil, it's going to grind to a halt eventually. And that's going to cost you more than if you just taken the time to change the oil. So my message in here is pretty obvious. No, we're not going to turn golf courses into homeless camps, but I really hope that we can respect one another enough to know that a fellow human, especially if they're a fellow human within your own country, if you really believe in any type of community or country, and you treat homeless people like shit because you think that they deserve that or that they're not working hard enough, you're completely out of touch with what's going on in this country right now. And so give people a break. You know, maybe stop, get to know people, and there are always going to be the ones who abuse the system. But I think that most people mean well. Most people want to do the right thing. And so this is my props to them. And as I said, the convicts, I didn't go too much into detail there, but I really wanted to say a lot of people who get out of jail on drug charges can't find a job. And I have a felony for marijuana, okay? I have another one for mushrooms. I've seen my share of the jail. I was put in solitary because they didn't have enough room in the actual cells for a pot charge. Yeah, the system is broken. And so if the system is as broken as it is, the least we can do is take care of one another. If we really call ourselves people, humans, a community. Treat your pack like your pack. And thanks for listening. Talk to y'all later.